Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in today to talk about Oshi chapter number 162. This chapter is titled Aqua Hoshino. And every manga series has a main character. And I honestly think every time that the main character has a chapter named after them in a series, and it's not like the first or second, like those introductory chapters, that is when you know that you are in for a wild roller coaster ride of a chapter of a series. Now, I wouldn't call this chapter of Oshi necessarily a roller coaster ride, as it mainly focuses on one single scene and one idea throughout the entire 18 pages of the chapter. But if I have to guess, I think this will be under a 20-minute video just for the fact this is a very short chapter. It's not particularly dialogue heavy, but it is very emotion heavy because I actually cried while reading this chapter. I will admit it, yes, I am a grown 19-year-old and all of that sort of deal, but I still cry occasionally when reading manga and stories and experiencing stories like this. And this is one of those chapters where normally I would have read it in my college library, like I've read the past few, like past, I don't know, 5 or so Oshi chapters at this point, but due to recent events, especially the hurricane that has recently come through the southeastern United States, that hit my college town extremely hard to the point where they canceled all my classes for a good little while and sent us all home. Being that fact, I have actually been home while I was reading this chapter, and I don't know if that sort of added to those feelings or something of also being back home after not being home for a while. Just a little bit of different things, but yes, I cried while reading this chapter, and it takes a lot for me to get that emotionally invested in a series like this, and this chapter just hit on so many emotional levels as we just go through and see. I mean, we will talk about it here in a second. Like, I don't want to spoil anything outright, even though if you're watching this video, you're probably ready to get spoiled on a chapter if you've not read it already, which just go around, read the chapter, and then come back and watch this, because or do whatever, maybe like you leave this video and on in the background and restart it to like read the chapter, because this chapter shouldn't take you long to read at all. But back to what I was getting to, this is a super emotional chapter of Oshi, and being that the title is Aqua Hoshino, you can tell that we're in for a wild ride of an Oshi chapter. Now, a few things to note before we start off this chapter. Number one is, I normally mention this at the end of the video because I forget to mention it at the beginning of the video, but this time we have the star icon that has the chapter number 162, Aqua Hoshino, words and text in it, which is pretty much just going through, like, yeah, it's in the star logo this time. I know we've had a few inconsistencies with that over the time I've been covering Oshi, which, my gosh, we are 50 chapters into this thing. That is insane that I've talked about this series for over a third of its run almost. Absolutely insane for sure. But no, like I was saying, this chapter is in the star icon, and the star icon is white this time. I know nobody probably cares about this fact other than me, but hey, thank you for watching this video, right? So, to talk about this Oshi chapter, first we need to talk about what happened last time in Oshi, and that was, of course, a massive chapter where we got the sort of big reveal of the Oshi series, or at least a big reveal of Aqua's plan on how to deal with Hikaru. Because, of course, Aqua was viewing Hikaru as a detriment to Ruby's future, being that if he is alive, Ruby will not be able to live her life to the fullest and become the idol that she wants to be. So Aqua needs to take out Hikaru one way or the other. Hikaru pretty much said some good manipulative words to Aqua, pretty much saying like, hey, but if you kill me, your sister will be looked on as the sister of a murderer, so you can't do that. And Aqua said, hey, I've got a plan for that. And with the knife in his hand, he ended up stabbing himself in the guise of that maybe Hikaru had the knife, and after a talk between them, Hikaru ended up stabbing Aqua, and then Aqua pushed the two of them off the bridge. And the final scene of last chapter was Aqua, who had a massive knife wound in his chest, going and pushing himself and Hikaru off the ledge. I think I said a bridge a minute ago. No, it's more of like a cliff over to the ocean down below. And that is pretty much where we start this with Hikaru. Of course, he was screaming last chapter like, no, don't do this, I want to live. Because of course, as much as he seems like he does not have an attachment to life, he wants to live because he wants to continue to be manipulative and try to figure out a way that he can be with Ai sort of in that sort of way, if you guys get what maybe my words aren't connecting here. I think they are, though. But we start off this chapter with an image of 3 different objects. The ledge, of course, where everybody was before, and we see Hikaru's phone laying on the ground with the screen sort of pointed up towards the sky. And of course, on that phone screen, we see Ruby's performance going on right now of the Biko no Hachi, Glare X Sparkle, the final concert in Tokyo, Japan right now, right? We then see an image of below the seawater, of course. We see the sea ground floor where there's a bunch of plant life and everything on it, and all of the water sort of around this area. We see a bunch of water bubbles coming up from, of course, where Aqua and Hikaru have just dropped down into the water, and currently there are air bubbles escaping up to the sea, right? And as we get this image, we flip the page to an image of Aqua with his hands on Hikaru's neck. They are currently under the water. Hikaru is further down, and Aqua is pretty much on top of him, almost strangling him with his hands. We see that Hikaru is like, all of his pupils are very dilated, and he's still got those dark Sharingans in his eyes, and we can tell that he's not enjoying this whatsoever. And how can you're drowning and also being choked out? Like, that's like a wham bam zam of things like, oh, I don't want to do those. And of course, on top of him, we see Aqua, who is the one doing this choking at this point, and we see his expression, which is like a mix of like fear and like, I've finally done this, like a feeling of satisfaction away. Like, his mouth is like a mix between the two of them, of like, I've finally done this, as we see his light Sharingans shining in his eyes. Of course, the eyes that convey love, and the eyes that lie or convoke and all of that other weird stuff, right? But at this point, we finally get our first dialogue words of the chapter, as Hikaru just thinks to himself at this point, like, oh no, my vision is getting blurry, like, I also think I hit my head on a rock a second ago, as we just see there's a little cut on his forehead right above his, what is that, his right eye? Yeah, right above his right eye, where there's a bunch of blood coming out. So of course, a head wound underwater while getting choked out, yeah, not too good for Hikaru, but hey, it's what he deserves. And Hikaru also just thinks like, damn it, like I hit my head on a rock, like, I'm losing strength. Am I really going to die in a place like this? No, not yet! As we see that Hikaru in this instant sort of grabs his hands that are sort of laying out beside of him, and he pulls them up and puts his hands around Aqua's neck in this moment, as Aqua is sort of forced to let go of Hikaru's neck, as Hikaru is a bit older and of course a bit stronger, so he's able to sort of have that reach on Aqua and hold him up a little bit, as all of a sudden, a dark shadowy figure appears behind Hikaru in the sea and puts a hand on his shoulder. As we see this image of it's this dark shadowy man who's wearing glasses, who's obviously meant to sort of be like a vestige of Goru. Of course, Goru Yamayama, who Aqua was before all of this happened. And we see this vestige suddenly come and almost start to pull Hikaru into the depths. And Hikaru looks behind him, sort of sees this image in a way, and finally just thinks to himself, and decides to let go of Aqua. And all of these hands suddenly start to stretch off from the sea, all of these dark shadows, and sort of pull Hikaru down to the bottom of the ocean. And as this is happening, Aqua is sort of now just floating in the ocean. As Hikaru's being drugged down, Hikaru suddenly just starts to think, like, I felt like I was only alive when I was with Ai, but I wanted to feel your presence. But that presence became weaker as I grew older. Even if it was the weight of my sin, I wanted to feel your presence forever, Ai. As we pretty much see that Hikaru at this point is just thinking about Ai, the person who he cared the most about in his life, as he is suddenly just drowning down to the bottom of the ocean. He's almost lost all his will to live at this point, as he's just sinking down to the bottom further and further. As we see that he just puts a hand out towards the sky one more time, as like a final reach up to the heavens to try to pull him out of there. But he just continues to sink. And as he almost is ready to hit the bottom, his pupil suddenly dilates one final time as we finally see the dark Sharingan is out of his eye. He's got this massive head wound, and as he's almost to the bottom of the sea, he just thinks one more thought. Too bad. I could have felt more if I had killed you, Ruby. As we pretty much get the notion that Hikaru has now sunk to the bottom of the sea. At this point, we cut back up to the shore and the cliffside above where Aqua and Hikaru were just moments before, as we get a look at the moonlight in the sky, the moon shining over the ocean itself. And we get an image of the phone on the ground, as we just see Ruby, who has just finished up her song, putting her hands up into the air and looking joyful and jubilant as all of this is going on. We get a small shot of Crow Girl, who's holding a feather of a crow in her hand. But now we cut back down under the sea, where of course now Aqua is just floating in the sea aimlessly. Of course the stab wound in his side, but he has finally completed his mission. He's gotten rid of Hikaru, the one person who would bring ruin to Ruby's world. And as Aqua is just laying here in the ocean, he just sort of looks up towards the sky and sees the moonlight shining below as we cut up one more time to the surface of the ocean, where we see Crow Girl, of course, who is standing there sort of in the sky, sort of almost floating as it seems, or walking in water. We don't really get a great image here, as we pretty much just get a note of where Crow Girl says, "Oh, so have you found your mission, Aqua?" And as we cut back under to sea, we pretty much just hear the thoughts of Aqua as he's sort of drowning here in this moment too. As he just thinks, "Oh, I think the reason why God allowed me to be a cheater, to have been reincarnated after having already died once. The reason I lived was definitely not for revenge." And he says, "The reason I was reborn, it was to protect my own sister." As we see a few images of Aqua's eyes growing weaker and weaker as he's sort of falling further into the ocean, we see pretty much the wound in his side is also not looking great. We see a little blood trailing out of his mouth. But as he thinks all of this, we see a panel of Ruby, who of course is his sister, the one who he swore to protect, and the one that he protected until the end. As Aqua just continues on with some narration, "And that is why I was born a twin, the one closest to my sister." As we get a few more images, of course, Aqua is still fading to the bottom of the ocean. We see that his light Sharingan is still in his eye, but it's fading massively as time goes. We see a shot of Ruby, who of course is in the future, or is not in the future right now. It's not how the manga works. Like, yeah, reincarnation happens, but Ruby suddenly is not going into the future or something. We see like the current Ruby, who is performing the Galaric Sparkle Tour and just finished up her song. We see that she's happy. We see her light Sharingan is shining massively. And as Aqua thinks this, like, hey, I was born closest to my sister, we see an image of him, I, and Ruby. Of course, him and Ruby are young children right now, and I is standing behind them. We see their birth in the hospital as the two of them were born side by side. We see, of course, when they were younger and they were just doing all of their things, and sort of how they just grew up together over time when they were really young and when they were starting to get old enough to go to school. And eventually, and whenever they went to their high school for the first time, of course, where we saw this series pretty much start in like the current timeline when like Aqua and Ruby were 15 years old and all that deal, right? And we finally see one more image of Goru and of course Serena, who of course they had this dynamic before, and Aqua just thinks the final words of this chapter after he says like, hey, closest to my sister, thank goodness this time I can die before you. As we, of course, like I said a minute ago, we think back to, of course, the Doctor and Serena, Goru and Serena. Because, of course, last time, whenever their dynamic was around, it was Serena who sadly had to die first. And this time, Aqua is able to protect her and let Ruby live on into the future. As at this moment, we see that Aqua is suddenly just going down towards the sea some more. And we see his wound in his side is still bleeding massively, the blood coming out of his mouth a little bit. but we see that his mouth has turned into a little bit of a smile as he's heading down towards the bottom of the sea. And that is where we end this chapter of Oshi no Ko. Like I said, this is definitely going to be a very short review, just of the nature of what this chapter is. There's not many words on it, and there's not a lot of, like, dialogue and, like, heavy, just, like, what am I saying, like, heavy action or anything, right? It is just the emotion as Aqua is falling down to the bottom of the sea. And, of course, at the beginning of this chapter, we do see that, like, the downfall of Hikaru, as Hikaru is sort of going, and falling down to the sea. We, of course, see the image of, like, a, almost like a shadowy, spectral Goru who comes up sort of help drag Hikaru down, but what I'm sort of envisioning that is, like, that's almost like a will that Aqua is, like, portraying off of him, and that sort of, like, gets into Hikaru's head a little bit as he, like, sees how determined Aqua is, and Hikaru just decides to give up at that point. But, of course, at the same time, we know that Hikaru still wanted to live, like, he still wanted to struggle during all of this, so it's very interesting of, like, alright, what actually was this going on? I mean, in Oshi no Ko in the past, we have seen, like, the spectral scenes where, like, Aqua and Goru go into their, like, inner world and have their discussions there, but Oshi no Ko, as far as having supernatural elements, such as reincarnation, we never really see moments like this where, like, a spectral hand comes and, like, pulls somebody down to the depths of the sea, and that's just not something that I think is actually happening. It's, like, more of those, like, more metaphysical metaphor type of deals, but it's still something that Hikaru goes through. Hikaru, until the end, of course, was, like, apathetic to Ai, like, hey, I only felt alive when I was with her, I wanted to feel it forever, but it faded. Too bad I could have felt more if I had killed Ruby. We can see that he's a dark, evil, and twisted man by the fact of, yeah, I mean, look at that. You cannot read that and tell me, like, oh yeah, he had a redemption arc towards the end, because he obviously didn't. And of course, the whole Aqua stuff of where he just thinks, like, hey, the reason why God, of course, Krogirl in this scenario, reincarnated me was so that I could protect Ruby this time around, because last time, as Goru, I couldn't save her. And that final line that Aqua gives of, thank goodness this time I can die before you, man, it just hits you in the feels, like, man, it is so incredibly sad, like, oh, I shed a tear, I shed multiple reading this chapter the first time, because I don't understand how you can't. Now, my one problem with this chapter, as a guy who does YouTube, YouTube needs thumbnails. And normally for these manga chapters, I pick images that come out of the chapter and put them in my thumbnails. If you go through all of the thumbnails I've ever made on this channel, that's how almost every single one of them works, except for, like, an exception of one, if I'm not mistaken. Like, all the images come from the chapter itself. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Like, I would love to put, like, a 2-page spread of, like, Aqua splayed out in the ocean, but Aqua, like, clearly has, like, blood coming out of him, and that's, like, spoiler 101. Like, I don't know what images to pick here, but I'll figure out something. That's for editing Glowplasma 231 to deal with. But yeah, this was an amazing chapter of Oshi no Ko. It simply just hits you in the feels. As far as what's going to happen next time, I really have no idea. I think that there's obviously going to be a ploy of, alright, Ruby will probably, and everybody will learn the news of this, and I do think Aqua is dead here. Like, as sad as it is, I do think that he is just, sadly, just done with his life here, because I don't think you can come through this, like, alright, let's talk about other manga and endings and stuff, right? Like, I know a reason a lot of people did not like the ending of Tokyo Revengers. A few spoilers for Tokyo Revengers here, but nothing really major, so skip ahead, like, I don't know, like, a minute or so if you don't want to hear these spoilers, because I'm not going to put a times code down in the bottom of the video, but be warned for the rest of, like, this final thoughts section. Tokyo Revengers had an ending where it was very much of a Mickey Mouse ending, to where a lot of people didn't like it for the fact, like, oh, yeah, because we were able to go back in time and all of that, we went through and we pretty much made everything the best. We, introduced the one antagonist, I don't remember Tokyo Revenger characters' names at this point, the one, like, bigger bad guy with glasses for the first little bit of the series. We welcomed him into the group, and everybody's now alive and all of that deal. And I thought that worked for Tokyo Revengers because that was the whole thing of making sure everybody got out of that alive, and even when there were casualties, you make it good, right? But with this, with Oshi no Ko, I think that Aqua has to die after this because I don't think you can do much with Aqua's character currently, right? I mean, I don't think that's really the case. And if anything, what Aqua's going to do is he's just going to be reincarnated again, where this time he can live a truly happy life as hopefully not the daughter of Ruby. I think that'd be a little weird and like, but he's going to be reincarnated as somebody and somehow get to live and spend the rest of his days with the rest of our core cast. Or at least, that is what I want for this series. I also think that Asat's Cost and Mingo Yorkie could also just come up with the idea of, like, a better one than what I just mentioned, but that's just what I'm sort of headcanoning will probably happen right now, but that's, like, nothing to be like, oh yes, this is the concrete what's going to happen next time in Oshi no Ko, right? Don't really know that for sure. Next chapter of Oshi no Ko, we've got to actually wait 3 weeks for. It comes out on October 23rd of 2024, so a little bit of a wait there, but I think it's probably worth it after this insane chapter of Oshi no Ko that we got this week. Yes, would I like more consistent Oshi no Ko? Would my channel like more consistent Oshi no Ko? Yes, I would, but it's not the end of the world. This was an amazing chapter, and if a manga can make me cry, yes, that is what I call a good chapter right there. But with that, thank you guys so very much for watching this Oshi no Ko chapter number 162 video. If you did enjoy it, I've got plenty of other Oshi no Ko videos on the channel you can go check out, like I alluded to earlier. I've got about 55 different chapter reviews at this point, so I've been talking about this series for a little while, so go check out any of those videos if you want to see my thoughts there. I talked about other anime and manga series. Go check out those. Some of them will be linked in the description down below. But also just go to my channel page. You'll see everything there. And then for anime, manga series, and all of that sort of deal. As I alluded to earlier, I was sort of affected. I wasn't affected terribly by Hurricane Helene. Definitely not as bad as some other people in my area are. So if you know anybody who's been affected, just please, like, check on them, do all of that stuff. Just a little quick note there. I've never really like been like a, yes, here's your disaster relief PSA, like do all of that. So now, with all of that being said, thank you guys so very much for watching. Of course, this was Oshi no Ko, chapter number 162. This chapter, of course, was titled Aqua Hoshino. And I will see you guys in 3 weeks for Oshi no Ko, chapter number 163. Thank you guys so very much for watching again, and I'll see you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma 231. Signing out.